Susan Cox Powell was born on October 16, 1981, in Albion, Washington. She was the second of three daughters in her family. Her parents, Charles and Judy Cox, raised their children with love and care. Susan grew up a cheerful and optimistic girl, fond of music and art. During her school years, she was an active participant in various events and won the sympathy of teachers and peers. In 2001, Susan met Joshua Powell online. They quickly became close and began dating. In 2001, the couple got married and moved to West Valley City, a suburb of Salt Lake City, Utah. Soon they had two sons, Charlie and Braden. Susan worked as a cosmetologist and hairdresser, and Joshua an IT specialist. At first, their life seemed perfect, but soon problems began to appear. Joshua turned out to be a domineering and controlling husband. He was often aggressive and criticized Susan for every little thing. Despite this, Susan tried to keep the family together for the sake of the children. She was involved in church life and hoped that their problems could be solved. On December 7, 2009, Susan Powell went missing. That day, she did not show up for work, which caused concern among her coworkers and friends. The employees immediately contacted the police to report her missing. The police arrived at the Powell's home and found that no one was home. Soon, Joshua returned home with the children. He said that the night before, he took his sons on a night walk in nature, and Susan remained at home. Joshua claimed that he returned home only in the morning and did not know where his wife was. The police began an investigation, interviewing neighbors and friends of the family. It turned out that Susan had been talking to a friend on the phone the night before, and there was no indication that she was missing. There was no sign of a struggle in the Powell's house, but the police found her wallet, mobile phone, and keys, indicating that Susan had no plans to leave the house. Joshua Powell immediately became the prime suspect. His story about the night walk seemed strange and suspicious. The police began checking his alibi and looking for clues that could shed light on Susan's disappearance. However, Joshua refused to cooperate and refused to answer the police's questions. The public and the media quickly picked up on the story. Susan's disappearance became a major news story, and her photo appeared on the front pages of newspapers and in news broadcasts. Hundreds of volunteers took part in the search, scouring the surrounding forests and deserts, hoping to find at least some kind of lead. The situation became more complicated when it was discovered that Joshua had moved with the children to live with his father, Steve Powell, in Washington state. Steve Powell was also acting suspiciously and refusing to cooperate with the police. Police found notes and photographs in Steve's home indicating that he had been stalking and obsessing over Susan. Despite the best efforts of the police and volunteers, Susan was never found. In February 2012, a tragedy occurred that shocked everyone. Joshua Powell, while under investigation and having lost custody of his children, killed his sons and himself by setting the house they were in on fire. This event caused a wave of public outrage and grief. Following the tragic death of Joshua Powell and his sons in February 2012, the investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance was renewed with renewed vigor. Investigators focused on searches and interviews, hoping to find new evidence that could shed light on her fate. A key figure in the investigation was Steve Powell, Joshua's father. Police found numerous videos and photographs in his home that showed his unhealthy interest in Susan. These materials became important evidence in the case against Steve Powell. In May 2012, he was arrested and charged with possession of child pornography. Although these charges were not directly related to Susan's disappearance, they confirmed that the Powell family was involved in dark and suspicious activities. Susan's parents, Charles and Judy Cox, did not give up trying to find their daughter and managed to draw attention to the problems of domestic violence and the shortcomings of the victim protection system. They actively cooperated with the police and the media, organized memorial events and charity events dedicated to the memory of Susan and her sons. In 2015, Steve Powell was found guilty of possessing child pornography. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. In 2017, he was released early due to health reasons and died shortly after his release. His death left many unanswered questions, and many believe that he knew more than he was saying about Susan's fate. The case of Susan Powell remains one of the most tragic and mysterious stories in the latest crime chronicles of the United States.